The following is a conversation with Michael Villegas, Rumors of Instinct, as you all know him. He is back by popular demand and by popular request. We made sure this time around to not kind of scatter ourselves all over the place. We decided, because we covered so much in the last Kraken conversation, in addition to some of the Zoom calls that the top tier members have seen him on to, we decided to focus more on subterranean global networks, certain beasts that we would refer to as the kaijus, just for the sake of the fact that we had no other name to call them. And then we slowly veered our way off into the Galactic Federation and the ICC, which is the interstellar corporate conglomerates, which is basically all of the human corporations that are doing the secret space program work. So without further ado, you can find him on Rumors of Instinct, at Rumors of Instinct on Instagram, and please do enjoy. Cheers. All right. So back by not only popular request, but such a great guy, was going to have him on again anyways. Rumors of Instinct is back. Welcome, sir. Thank you so much for coming on again.
Thank you. Thank you very much, General Gen Z. I always want to call you General Z, but Generation Z. No problem. Absolutely. It's an honor to be back. I love your program and I love your channel and what you're doing, your research and your journalism. So this is definitely, I always say iron sharpens iron and a friend sharpens a friend. And this is definitely an example of that. Cause I, first saw your videos and then we did the podcast the first time and I was like, this guy really gets it. He really has the drive and the discernment, and you have like the real, intelligence and kind of cunning to discern what is real and what's not. And so over these conversations, because this is I believe our fourth or fifth real collaboration or conversation together on this subject.
Right.
That it's been absolutely an honor to kind of be able to speak to your audience and to speak to you, and to kind of be able to kind of give the information out.
Well,
But
the honor. Sorry.
anyone watching here, I have my own
Yes,
YouTube,
please.
the Rumors of Instinct podcast YouTube channel, which is the YouTube channel for my podcast, which is the Rumors of Instinct podcast, and you can check that out on Spotify or anywhere podcasts are free. Apple Podcasts. It has a lot of directories to it, so just check it out. A lot of episodes, over 300 on the YouTube, 90 now on the podcast. So this is a lot of information that I'm trying to put out there, trying to get people to listen to, trying to get people to hear the truth, because I believe it's important information. I believe it's information that helps out a lot of people connect the dots and to kind of alleviate a lot of the confusion. I'm just trying to help. I'm trying to help the community. I'm trying to put that information out there. It's all for free. Exactly. It's all for free. Go check it out. There's a lot of information already covered. So exactly, if you were watching this and you have a question like, hey, what's this? I wish they, talked about that. Check out my channel. Because I have 300 plus videos on the YouTube channel, 90 in the podcast. So, I'm trying my best to kind of put everything forward.
Oh, we can, believe me, we can see that you're definitely putting it out there 100%. You could see that the passion is there without a doubt, and not just the passion, but even the firsthand experience from your own memories too. But let's start on Earth a little bit. So what's going on? I think a lot of people are seeing now, for example, in the last couple of weeks, a lot of events have occurred. The Russians have sent more soldiers to the Arctic. There was an Indonesian military submarine that allegedly stopped working. It fell to the bottom of the floor, and then it hovered back up in 3 separate pieces. It almost looked like it got bitten off, rather than what the Indonesian military said, which was just a freak accident hitting a rock at the bottom, so to speak. So is there anything about that you can right, anything you can connect on that, and you can expand into whatever area you like, and then we'll jump into.
I would also like to include in the list of recent sea disasters the sinking of the Sea Core. The Sea Core was a drilling platform ship, basically a oil rig that can sail around, and it's a temporary smaller version of an oil rig, and it sailed out of, I believe, Louisiana and into a storm, which was not unusual for this type of ship, but they are blaming the storm for capsizing it. And out of a crew, I believe, of 20, there are 7 missing. I believe 6 were already found deceased and the rest were rescued, but it's not getting any press in the mainstream media, even though it
Wow.
qualifies as the largest maritime disaster in America since the BP oil spill and the BP oil well explosion. So it's
Wow.
at that level of loss of life, and it's not being covered. It was a massive ship with a large crew of merchant mariners and oil rig professionals, and it was basically capsized, and it's at an unusual angle. And they were suggesting a freak rogue wave hit it, and basically a gigantic squall hit it, and it was absolutely abnormal and out of expectation. Like just a freak accident. But it could also be very much something just flipped it over.
Would
And
you
this what
so
this
would
is
you
how
say these events that are occurring because these creatures are trying to get to the surface now, or it's just because of social media and the news being so interconnected these days that this has always been occurring? It's just now we
it's always
see it
been
more.
occurring. It's always been occurring. They have their geographic territories and these ship graveyards, these concepts of like the Bermuda Triangle or the Devil's Triangle. Generally, you have to think of the ocean itself as being like, what you can define as a hurricane. There's something inside the storm being driven up due to the churning waters. And
Right.
because it rises while you're in the hurricane as well, people will blame the hurricane at the loss of ships. But whole armadas have been lost, whole flotillas have been lost, whole squadrons have been lost. There
Wow.
in World War II, there were 52 unaccounted for, absolutely lost submarines
Wow.
off the coast of Alaska.
Oh my gosh. Holy
That's
crap.
what I'm
That's
saying. So they will say treacherous waters.
right.
Perfectly relatable example. Like that's just an explanation of it. But these were totally unaccounted. Like no one knows why these ships sank. The
Right.
submarine disaster in 1968. There was a summer where 4 submarines, nuclear submarines, were lost in 1968. Both Soviet Union and NATO troops or sailors. One was an Israeli submarine in the
Right.
Mediterranean. There was a Russian submarine, 2 Russian submarines in the North Atlantic, and the Thresher or the Scorpion. Sorry, the Scorpion was also lost that year, 1968. Now,
In
people might think that was a secret naval battle, but it could also have been, over the course of a year, uh, the movement of these creatures. Because if you really look at the records, submarines are super top secret and they are damaged in very strange ways for being as high tech as they are. Collisions with rocks, for example, they
right.
have sonar and radar that can map the ocean floor, with lidar and things like that to an inch
Right.
of geographic spatial distance.
So
A
you're
submarine
you're saying the odds of them hitting rock is
is
almost impossible.
absolutely, exactly. There's no solid explanation for the loss of these submarines, and just the concept of losing a nuclear submarine is absolutely abnormal because they're extremely important military technologies with absolute chain of communications with many different uh you know different stations of commands and things like that. Like there's no way you would lose a submarine. Like let's just say
Right.
that there's no way you would lose a submarine. It would have to be taken from you, sunk on purpose or destroyed on purpose, intentionally. That's
Right.
not something you lose. And also this starts going into the theories of the hollow earth,
Right.
in that these submarines are being lost as we try to explore these subterranean levels of the ocean or caverns, or mapping out frontiers and things like that, because of the sometimes unpredictable pressures. and
Right.
and so like they have crush depths and things like that. But I also believe that the submarines don't have any crush depths limits anymore, at least not the United States and ones, because their engineering is so advanced and the materials they use are so advanced. This is legitimately top secret military stuff.
Right.
the designs and engineering specs of modern day nuclear submarines.
So this
I don't.
concept that, sorry, this concept that the pressure will kill or disassemble a ship, you say they can surpass that very
Yes,
easily.
now they have found out ways to surpass that. They work with technologies too, like uh, they create like a bubble, and it creates like a cavity in the water, and thus they're able to accelerate to hundreds of knots.
Got you.
And it basically turns a submarine into like a jet fighter,
Does this
because
use
it
any
flies.
alien elements in it?
Yes, these are related to alien technologies. Exactly. This was loaned to us by the Greys. At this point, the United States is working with Grey technology as reverse engineered, so allowing us to achieve this. Specifically, the working with metamaterials.
Okay,
Uh,
so
yeah.
just wanted to ask very quickly too. What's the, because I don't think we covered this in the last episode. What's the, if you had to take a very general guess, what's the relative size of, for example, the space within Hollow Earth that the Agarthans have or the inner Earth beings have compared to the massive, we'll call them kaiju's for the sake of the big monsters, for the
Oh,
sake of this interview. Do the monsters have a lot of swimming space or not really?
no, it's absolutely infinite. The idea of them, no, it's not. It's not like an issue of space. It's an issue of basically exploring a frontier where these things are native fauna. They are
Got you.
native marine biology. This is all a part of the true ecology of Earth, a greater sense of nature and environment where the scale of life is not limited um, by what we would think modern day standards. Like I always hear the square rule law or something, the square um, something where it's like the size of a creature basically diminishes its life functions, like it becomes harder to exist. That's absolutely preposterous. These
Mm,
creatures exist in titanic scales, sometimes miles and miles by our measurements. And it's like, that's what I'm saying. There's only so much you can fucking do if you run into a turtle that is 2 or 3 miles wide and it's just basically swatting, it just swats you down. It's not like what people think where these things have like pitched battles or they chase. It's seemingly just a sense of territory at the most, like as if they're curious and they're just destructive, by their sense of scale and strength. But we are dealing with a type of marine biology, and just as if though you encountered a fish that was, and some of these are just fish that was super large, and it decides to eat you.
mm.
If you're in a 300-foot submarine, your best bet is to outrun it if you're not armed to kill it, because you can see it on your sonar and everything. But at the same time, they're capable of great, what we consider speeds, but it's just a scaled relativity.
Right.
It doesn't, if
Yeah.
they're a mile long, they can achieve speeds of thousands of miles per hour in our terms. And in
Wow.
short, that's what I'm saying, in short bursts. That the idea of strength becomes not an issue of your, say, for example, in titanium submarine, because it's the size of a fucking mountain and it's just going to crush down on you because its flipper weighs like 1,000 tons.
Right. Now, are
And that's
these
what I'm saying.
are
Like,
these sorry, are these beings that can communicate with governments intelligently or not really? These are
no, not
beings.
really. No, these
Okay.
are absolutely the wild fauna of what we would consider the Hollow Earth. Like I said, the Monarch movies, the series and legendary series of the monster universe, like Monarch series is what I call it because it's about Monarch,
Right.
and the best ones are Monarch. Fully disclose um, the ideas of these creatures being both known, researched, and covered up by the same government entity, this shadowy company of technologists and international scientists that's, like I said, study the Hollow Earth. Specifically, um, the fact that this was known about since World War II, because in a lot of
Right.
cases, they were encountered in the South Pacific. They were encountered in the deep Pacific or Mariana Trench area that's in the South Pacific, off the
Right.
coast of Asia. This was known by the local population as these sea monsters, these sea dragons. But sea monsters have been known since men started sailing. that's absolutely a reality if you are a real career sailor. And
Mm,
this is something that you can always say that if it didn't happen to you, you don't believe it. But just
right.
like USO sightings are an absolute reality to the Navy,
Yeah.
every, every fucking real Navy commander understands and knows and has been briefed and reported on seeing USOs. That is an
Gotcha.
absolute reality. Like I said, it's in official logs. It's on the History Channel. The Eisenhower, the first nuclear aircraft carrier, was basically surrounded and followed by USOs. Admiral Byrd, the Taiping with the submarine actually recording the USOs entering and exiting. Um, you have Shag Harbor, where U.S. Navy divers were sent to locate a crashed UFO or USO. Like this is absolutely reality. The Mediterranean with the different navies there, Italian Navy, the French Navy, the Spanish Navy. They
Also, the humanoid looking underwater beings too that
Oh yeah,
are
Soviet Union
allegedly
encountered Lake
late.
Baikal.
Right,
No,
right.
everyone knows USOs are an absolute reality. That's absolutely true. Now those beings can communicate. Those beings do communicate, but like I said, they are very. See, this is it's. They're not hollow Earth beings. Those would be underwater, marine terrestrials,
Are
basically.
they benevolent? Are they negatively in negative intent towards humans? What would you say based on your
They are
memories?
extremely territorial, but they have the right to be. Are they benevolent to humanity? Sometimes, and sometimes not.
Right. Okay.
They are independent, and they have no real respect for human authority. And at this point, they do obviously this is their terrain. They have evolved to it, but we have underwater cities as well, and they allow us to live in certain places. Now, I said the
Okay.
ocean's a big place. It is like if we were encountering Native Americans again.
Right.
Sometimes things are good.
Yeah.
Sometimes things are bad. When things
Yeah.
are bad, this is kind of their home turf. Shit, sometimes they slaughter a city of underwater colonists and miners.
And it's
We
kind
really
of
don't know what we did wrong. They'll communicate with us. We'll try to fix it. At the same time, we are just now starting to live in the ocean, exploring the ocean floor, and they're not going to really exactly stop us because
right.
it is our planet as well, but it's not our domain. It's extremely difficult to explore the ocean floor. It's easier to go to space. And as I said, this is part of the secret space program because a lot of the technology that we actually get and gather from space, including metamaterials like different kinds of elements and things, which help out build the submarines that can go into these spaces and create the engines that become the reactors that propel the ships. Um, but it's basically been a thing since the World War II era. U-boats were able to explore because they were using relic maps from Viking sailors who originally had went into the hollow earth is what's created Agartha. And this is where it kind of gets to, yes, you can use the oceans to get to the hollow earth because they're like waterfalls, but the way gravity works is that you can actually, and I know it sounds preposterous, but if you're sailing a ship, you can go around the horizon at some point and actually still be oriented up because of the way gravity works. It's actually kind of a magnetism that's located in dirt, but it works on carbon.
Mm,
And so it's a very strange reality, but like I said, it's a very odd thing that this is actually part of sailor lore, where a ship really can just go upside into the water and be sailing on the bottom of the ocean in a
gotcha.
pocket,
Right.
in a
Right.
pocket. And so, like I said, they showed this in the Godzilla versus Kong movie where they go and then they get inverted,
Right.
or Black Panther, where they go into the hole, but then they come right side up.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the difficulty is creating a ship that can withstand that
Okay.
reorientation and the difference of pressures. And sometimes like the old technology really couldn't do it, although you can find places where it's easier to do it than places where it's not. It's like going into a whirlpool or going into like rapids, where there are some rapids where you can safely navigate, but some other rapids which are extremely treacherous because they have, let's say, a lot of debris, like debris, rocks, thin terrains. Like I say, it's the danger of cave diving, but in a submarine.
Now, do they use the Do they use circular disc craft for these to get through these a little bumps in the road, if you will, or do they use the super advanced submarines?
Well, we use submarines, but the Greys also do go down there. The Greys go everywhere. The Greys have technology that can do this. Exactly. The Greys are everywhere, and they work for everyone. And so
Hmm.
they're as likely to see a Gray under the water as you are to see a Gray anywhere. Like exactly. It's one of those things where they just kind of go where, because like I said, they're an independent faction too, and they're neutral. And
Right.
they sometimes work with these MarineTerrestrials, which, like I said, this goes into the idea of ultra-terrestrials. There are other species that are equally as intelligent as humans that live on the Earth and are actually contacting extraterrestrials equally as we are, because they're contacting the entire Earth. We're just
Right.
a piece of the puzzle. And like I said, we're very egocentric and culturally relativistic, but it's actually kind of made that way because it's for our own good. Ignorance is bliss, in their
Right.
opinion. And we don't really have to stress out about the Atlanteans,
Mm.
or whatever that lives in the ocean. The MarineTerrestrials, exactly, like whatever name you want to call them, these basically aquatically adapted humans, because they are
Right.
human,
Right.
but they're aquatically adapted to the point that they are a separate species now, including different activations of genetic sequences, different activations of proteins in their genetic code, different, number of chromosomes.
Sorry,
It's
via genetic experimentation or naturally?
No, I think that they were actually artificial. They were created like mankind was, separated from a common ancestor by the Orion Draco. They have formed their own society like we have, and we are as alien to them as we are alien to any other species. Although, exactly, well, there's a lot of similarities. They have developed their own culture completely under the ocean, on the ocean floor, and that's their framework and perspective of existence. Exactly. They think we are as fantastical to them as they are fantastical to us. And
Gotcha.
they actually don't look very human anymore. It's not like Jason Momoa just hanging out, diving around. No,
Right.
they are like fishmen. Like they are like deep ones. They are like the Shape of Water. We had a really
Okay.
good, the Ape Sapien. Those are
Right.
actual things. Like that's full on disclosure. They look like that. They're hairless. They have gills, webbed feet, webbed toes, but they're bipedal. They have 5 fingers, 5 toes. They
Right.
have the joint structure, ratios of hips, spine, the shoulder, back. They're more, exactly. If an alien would be like, "Hey, you guys basically look identical," like it's hard. Like no, they would kind of know. But
Yeah.
to a real alien, like a non-humanoid alien, we are basically the same with uh, different details.
Now, do any of them go into space, not just with humans, but maybe, secret space program or Galactic
No, they're in the
Federation?
Earth Alliance.
Or
Yes.
or is they or do they have the alliance, but they prefer to stay where they are in the water? They like their territory. That's it.
No, they haven't. They're in the Earth Alliance. So the Earth Alliance, the Blue Sphere Alliance, is the kind of confederation that we're in. Solar Warden is mostly human, but they are a part of it. Many ultra terrestrials on Earth, mostly all of them are either they send elected representatives because they're not the entirety of their population, but they are involved with it. Like I said, they are dealing with the Greys. They are, getting technology as we are. They are as advanced as we are. They are dealing with the Ashtar High Command psychically like we are.
Right.
They are volunteering their technology, manpower, and infrastructure, as well as developing their society to get ready for it. Because, like I said, this is all a root uh, system. So all these ultra terrestrials are dealing with having to be free from Orion Draco control, as well as how to live in peace and harmony with ourselves. Because that's what's being enforced, is that the Earth Alliance has to keep it all like copacetic and peaceful. And
Right.
because it's like the Pax Ashtar Sharon, where it's like the peace, Earth will be peaceful. There will be peace on Earth, no matter what they have to do to get it. Now, this is going to be an infinitely harder hurdle. It's not just making people live together, it's making people accept other ultra terrestrial species that cohabitate on the Earth to create a multi species society. Like I said, this is like Men in Black level, where yes, these higher entities like the Men in Black, Monarch, or whatever kind of secret shadowy government name you want to give it, the NWO, the New World Order, the Atlantis Rising government, they know that there's a multi-species world, right?
Right.
They
Right.
don't want us to know yet because they don't think we could handle it.
Is it still the concern of mass panic?
Yes, it's the concern of mass panic. Yeah, exactly. Because imagine the panic that was tested or proven when the Cold War occurred. If you would have a rival tribe of human beings with nuclear weapons and it threw the world into a nihilistic spin, like
Right.
basically a global depression that
Yeah.
was called the Cold War. Imagine how you'd feel if there was a non-human
Right.
species with nuclear weapons on the bottom of the ocean, who theoretically could just deploy their nuclear weapons and cause tidal waves and wipe out every single society on Earth. They're not going to do it, but they can. And that's the thing. That's the whole idea, is that you have to live in peace and respect with the nation, with other species, and we
Mm,
can barely do that with other nations. You would say, well, that's just because of our leaders. And you have to think the individual citizen, the individual person internalizes those prejudices and those beliefs and will.
right.
Exactly. You don't need to teach someone how to be an American. Oddly, they just do it. You
Yeah,
don't have to teach
I see what
someone
you're
to be a
saying.
Russian. They just are. And say
Right.
it's because the environment. So all the tribalism and territory. If you really break it down, and being a student of human nature, people from other towns don't get along. People from other neighborhoods don't get along. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you really think of the average person, they'll
Yeah.
shoot each other because they're from different neighborhoods.
Yes. You let alone if another species from another galaxy is coming.
Exactly.
Right.
That's saying, like,
Yes.
you don't have to make a gang. The gangs will just make themselves. And
Right.
that's what they're saying, is that as long as we keep doing that, the general population is not worth or not
Tribalism
trusted.
is the term, I think.
Exactly. That we are, like I said, I showed a picture on my Instagram where the tribals are shooting arrows at a drone when they first see the drone. And I was like, that's human nature. That's exactly what they're trying to battle against. And that's what the Orion Draco had us at, was such a state of paranoia and xenophobia.
Right.
That's the thing. Like, you really don't get it. That most of the times when tribes meet their first modern person, they kind of attack them, and they do not accept them. It's not like they live in peace and harmony with the universe. They are murderers, and they don't feel remorse or mercy. They are protecting their tribe, and they're protecting their families. And
Right.
but the person is not a threat to them, because that perceived paranoia is what we would call savagery. And that's
Right.
exactly what it is. But now it's been kind of whitewashed, where it's like, no, that's a noble spirit, like a Sentinel Island off India. if
Right.
you if you are an outsider and go to that forbidden island, the natives will kill you, and they don't feel bad about it. And I'm
Actually,
saying, like,
sorry, just that you bring this up, I just wanted to ask. There is allegedly a phantom island. I'm sure there's many of them, but one of them called High Brazil or High Brasil, 200 meters or miles, sorry, off the west coast of Ireland. These phantom islands that seem to occur every X amount of years, every 6 years, 7 years, 5 years, whatever. Are these ultra terrestrials? Are these more on the side of esotericism? Are these beings that interdimensional beings that don't have a physical body to manifest? And even the island itself, because it's on maps and it's been recorded as early as the 1300s. So what's going on there, would you say?
I know every story, there's different explanations for the different mystery islands and phantom islands. For the High Brazil, the specific case with that, in my opinion of it, is okay. So human beings can attain a sense of magic, what would be known as magic. It's called um, Arthur C. Clarke level technology, where if
Okay.
a technology is at a sufficient level, then it's akin to magic, right? It's
Okay.
indistinguishable from the common man as something that you would know as magic. This is all high technology.
Right.
Because the Orion Draco left, were destroyed, their empire, broken, they had to force the Hollow Earth. Some technology was still there. And if you look at the history books, obviously when people were rebuilding society, some people found and operated this technology.
Right.
Now, one of them may be what you would know as wizards. people who would dedicate their life to finding out and deciphering ancient technology that would be interpreted by the common man as a magical item. Like what we know as wands were actually vril rods, and vril rods can control and operate vril, thus making things like you just point it and it makes a concussive force that can knock a person out, basically, or it can, you know, knock down a wall. And so there you get the idea of like wizard battles, because he could just point the wand at you and then knock you down.
Is this
Or
similar to some of the sightings of alleged Nordic aliens, the ones that one of the species that look like
yeah,
us walking around with these pen-like wands?
yeah, they're like pins. Exactly. That's the idea of
Right,
a wand. It was like a pin. And now
right,
what the common man would say, he picked up the pin and then like lightning shot out of the pin. He
right,
must be satanic or aligned with the devil or something. And
right,
eventually, but that was like Merlin. Merlin had these technologies, stuff like that. And yes, they developed eccentricities and weird cultures and behaviors around them. Like I said, tribal people. But
right.
at the same time, this was a hybrid of people becoming intelligent and learning the mastery of technologies. Hybridsville is often reported as being the home to one of these men, a man who wears black and he raises giant rabbits to eat on this island. And he's like he's a planeswalker. If you kind of play Magic or D&D, just a wizard with the power to actually cross dimensions, to extend his lifespan to what we would know as immortality.
But this can all,
To
sorry, this can all be adapted within technology that
yeah,
we are familiar.
technology.
Right.
It
So
is
this
a
would
type
be
of technology.
classified as we could argue, just for the sake of the way that we as humans perceive like the English language, we can argue direct energy weapons. This would be that.
Yes, no, exactly. That's what,
Okay.
whatever name you want to put it is. A scientifically, you can engineer the idea of saying like, oh, this is electromagnetic wireless capacitation with kinetic and piezoelectric energy. Yes,
Right.
you can say, if you want to say it layman's terms, it's Arthur C. Clarke technology. It is technology that would be, it's hard to discern what is the actual operating mechanism. Like say, they have solid state computer chips nowadays, which
Right.
is just a solid state of metal that electricity runs through it, and thus somehow it's like a prism, and it spreads to its appropriate operations. So
Right.
no longer do you need it to follow a circuit or wireless technology. No longer do I have to have this phone attached to any wire.
Does this, sorry, Mike, I'm sorry for the interruption, but it's just really grilling my mind here. Is this related to some of the attempted reverse engineering of some of the holographic technology, where it's been, some whistleblowers have reported that when the symbols are placed in a certain way with a certain frequency being emitted within it, it's like the symbols come to life and already know what to do?
Yeah, they can.
Is
Okay,
it
so basically,
okay?
Hybridsville was a Stargate. That's another way of
Okay.
putting it. So
Okay.
Hybridsville was a Stargate, and so this is why he has the ability to cross over, and he's using the island itself like a spaceship to do so. And
Got
it's
you.
his home base, and he's got it protected. This wizard had it protected either through runics or what you'd call hypersigils, or like he's like electromagnetic control of a force field. And exactly, he's able to literally either go into the ocean or
Right.
go into what we would know as space on this island. And that is encountered sometimes and known about in the secret space program, where there are still a living community of these wizards, these ancient occultic magicians who we still encounter to this present day. And their understanding and mastery of this technology and thus their art form, and they don't reveal their secrets,
But
is
sorry,
quite,
they're ancient humans, or what
yeah,
species would you? Okay,
no,
okay.
they're ancient humans. But this is what I'm saying. So strangely enough, in Area 51, sometimes a wizard will appear.
In what sense? Because there have been some photographs of some humanoid looking beings hovering above the Area 51 site.
Exactly. No, no, a wizard will appear. The humanoid sightings in Mexico,
Right.
the witch flyings in Mexico, flying humanoids,
Yeah.
those are what you would call exactly used by these Arthur C. Clarke technologists.
And
And
so
they have a
they
very
appear on
odd
purpose
secret
or no?
society.
They
They do
okay.
exist. Yeah, they do appear on purpose. They have their own motivations, their own agenda. Exactly. These are people who survived and saw, you know, the King Arthur courts,
R-
medieval age. Um, who's that fucking guy? Um, oh, Saint Germain.
Okay. Yep. Yep.
Saint Germain, he's one of them. He shows. That's what I'm saying. They show up a lot. Like during the signing of the Constitution, he showed up. They had locked the doors until they had got the paperwork done. He just showed up, and he had, like, he has rings. And like I said, this is technology that you would think are rings, but they're not. They're like the in power crystals or whatever, the power stones, and the infinity gauntlet. That's something. He's got a fucking infinity gauntlet. But you think he's just like pimping out with rings, and he's Saint Germain. He's been alive for like 3,000 years, and he's been around in different cultures, like a Highlander. Those things are real. Like I said, sometimes they just they show up. They can either help out or not. They are real though. Is that sometimes they just kind of show up. Like it's like Highlanders who have been around for generations. They have their own agendas. They have their own motivations. But
they come
generally,
from
they keep to
another
themselves.
dimension.
No, they're from here. They're from our history. As I said, they've acquired technology that people, exactly, they've acquired it for themselves, and they hoard it. And that's why they're interested in us, because we're reverse engineering stuff. So sometimes they'll help out either to kind of fulfill their own quotas of stuff. Say, for example, they want a sire or an apprentice to follow their craft. This is extremely odd. But you would find like they want to just get an apprentice. And so for the exchange of, say, a male child so they can teach, they will, say, for example, offer their services. Stephen King's Atlantis, Tears of Atlantis, or Heart of Atlantis, is kind of about that, where sometimes a wizard will show up. And they said this one, like Randall Flagg is his antagonist, but that's absolutely the case in Randall Flagg. He's a kind of wandering nomad around time and space, and he's a human who's just acquired an extreme a level of enlightenment and awareness of, like, say, the multiverse, the powers of meditation, the technology that we consider these magical devices. Randall Flagg in the Dark Tower, for example, they show that his magic is actually a metal cap that he wears underneath his hat. Like I said, he'd just be like, but he has a computer underneath his hat that can actually give him the abilities that he has. But to the common man, he's just a dude who walks around. Exactly, he's the walking man. And it's like he's this plains drifter. That's what they call him, planeswalkers, the walking man. And that's why even Stephen King writes about the multiverse and the Dark Tower stories, because the Dark Tower series is a kind of disclosure for the realities that we're in.
Just curious, Mike, what do these technologies that these ancient humans have, these wizards, if you will, do these technologies, are they, would you equate them to the same level of power or capabilities as, for example, what the Venusians have, or no?
No, it is exactly. No, not so much. They're not as powerful as them. But it is technology on parity with the Venusians. The Venusians, though, are absolutely 100% the same where it comes to the ideas that their technology is like magic. Their physical abilities are different, and their psychic abilities are much less. Even though they are very adept at psychic abilities compared to ESP and telekinesis and things compared to the average human, they pale in comparison with the Venusian psychically. On the astral realm of Venusian is much higher of a dimensional being than we are. Like I said, we can barely be able to enter the fourth dimension, which is, like I said before, the vision, to be able to visualize and physically see the future as an extension of the self, so that you can actually change the course of the future, or change the course of the past. Because, like I said, they can look in one direction and see your future. They can look in the other direction and see your past. They can then be able to know everything about us. They see us like a serpentine form, because in their world, they see themselves the same, where they see your birth, your actual conception, your first cell. And as you grow, you extend out in one continuous form. And their skill is that if they can see long and hard and concentrate far enough, they can see from where you were conceived and your and where you're going to die. They know literally, and we can't. So they know that we can't change our fates. But they can see themselves, and they've already existed for like that for a long time. That's their existential burden, is that every single Venusian can see their own death and see their birth anytime they want. And they are simply choosing which moment to exist in. Now, a
I see. So
4D
sorry, they're
creature,
looking. So just to clarify, they're looking at a big timeline, so to speak, and they're just
yeah,
picking the point they want to enter.
exactly. And so
Okay.
to them, they are just already living in these moments. Every moment's already lived for them. They're just simply choosing to exist in either reality. So that's they're immortal, but they don't exist in they only exist in their natural timeline, but they never really have to experience death,
Okay.
right?
Right.
But in this, they have extreme depth of consciousness and awareness, and like they understand things on a philosophical level to an extreme degree.
Right.
You know, I
Okay.
think like philosophically, metaphysically, the wizards may be able to approach them and walk with them, and they might get some kind of respect just
Right.
because he's like an extremely advanced version of like a human. But
Right.
the Astro High Command is uh exactly the Venusians. Astro High Command is the military side of it, so it's weaponized in their aspect, like a martial side. It's kind of like a martial art in their way, but they are like a psychic level, like a good way to understand it is like X-Men level psychic level shit, like where it's like Professor X, Jean Grey, and like they have
Right.
the Dark Phoenix, and their actual main problem is the reason why they don't intervene and the reason why they're not super warlike is because if they indulge too much in violence and carnage, they can lose control and become kind of overwhelmed, that the Dark Phoenix style, like they can become overwhelmed with an uncontrollable destructive force. Like I
R-
said, that this is not like a thing where humans, when you see a Venusian, they're always on their best behavior because they kind of are seeing us the same way we see animals. And an animal is not like aware of its fate, but they, like I say, a man is not aware of his fate the way a
Right.
Venusian is aware of a man's fate, because they can literally see the moment that you're going to die,
Now, just
and
curious,
they
bro.
can't
Sorry,
change it.
any of these technologies or these very advanced forms of energy that we're discussing here, has any of it been used? Like, for example, you gave the example of how sometimes they'll appear at Area 51 and offer their assistance and things like this. Have any of these energies been applied to weapons that are keeping these kaiju down, or no? It's just
Okay, so
tradition. Okay.
the kaiju are not invincible, but they are on a scale that's difficult to kind of fathom and
But could a nuke
ration.
take a nuke could take them out
A,
or no?
an appropriately aimed nuke, yes, they're not invincible, like I said, but they would also be barraged. And say, for example, an atomic torpedo or a nuclear torpedo,
Mm,
those are actual technologies. You're right, and a submarine can bring a lot of payload. They also can use boomers if, say, for example, they surface and then they can pop up and use their missiles. Um, exactly, like a barrage of nuclear missiles is much more effective than one nuclear missile, and that's why it wouldn't be one nuclear missile, it would be a barrage of nuclear missiles. I kind of always laugh when thinking about the scale of Godzilla because it's not very large compared to these real life ones. Godzilla's only like 1,000 feet tall. It's not very, it's like it's less than a quarter mile. It's not like huge. It's huge.
what would you put these ones at? A couple miles?
Couple miles. They said one was actually thawed out of an iceberg in Antarctica, an ice shelf. It was thawed out and filmed going into the ocean by National Geographic. It was the size of Manhattan.
Whoa.
Yes, it was a black, like basically whale-looking kaiju that was thawed out of Antarctica because a lot of them were frozen in Antarctica, and it thawed out, and it was the size of Manhattan. Now,
Wow.
that's what I was saying. It's not as if though these kaiju don't range the sizes from just extraordinarily large common animals,
Right.
which a lot of them are derivatives of. They're extraordinarily large common animals mutated by the radiation down there. And so you see gigantic sharks, you see gigantic octopuses, crustaceans, arthropods, everything from starfish to jellyfish of titanic proportions. But then you see the specially evolved animals that you would consider, like, for example, your more dangerous sea monster types, like your actual chronosaurs, mosasaurs, things like that. Like, your aggressive, territorial, active, uh,
Mm,
you know, active predators that
yeah.
would territorially attack, a ship. Generally, though, it is the same as any marine environment where these animals are actually kind of rare and few and far between. So, say thousands of nautical square miles, and you can safely sail for years, decades without seeing one, and then one day there will be one. One
Wow.
day there
So
will be one because they're migrating, or they have hibernation cycles, or they are
right.
mating, and thus active only when they're mating because they're seeking mates, and
And
they're
so,
also
sorry,
stressing.
relative to Agartha and all that. So you're not saying it's like, you have the surface of the Earth, you got a lower level, then a lower level. You're saying there's little concaves, little ways in and out, and
It's
this is where.
absolutely
Okay.
labyrinthian, and it's like, no, there are layers, and there are layers that you can understand as layers, but we're talking
Sorry,
about
what I'm trying to
hundreds
what
of
I'm trying
miles.
to what I'm trying to ask is
Yeah,
that there are layers, but they're very scattered. They're not like cleanly shaped layers.
no, well, I mean, yes, and they're not like they're caverns and
Right.
pocket, but
Okay.
we're dealing over thousands and thousands of miles. Sorry, the volume of the Earth is trillions of times the surface area, or the usable volume right now currently. They only tell you we can dig 12 kilometers under the Earth.
Right.
We're talking about the crust into the second like major cavern system where it's mostly cavernous
Right.
is several hundred miles.
Wow. Okay.
So to get to the core of the Earth is actually more difficult because of the hostile environments, the pressures, the radiation, the magma, the pockets, just the sheer difficulty of digging into the rock and iron and nickel, nickel iron composites. This isn't soil. This isn't just a rock. It's not granite. These are actual like diamonds and that make up layers, entire crusts of strata of diamonds and like rare earth metals like uranium, plutonium. That's what I'm saying. Like, okay, so there are over 2 billion pounds of iron pulled every year, and we have enough supply to pull that amount of iron for like a million years or a
Wow.
billion years. It's like not even like, so we have trillions and trillions of cubic square miles of crust and mantle on the Earth. The Earth is gigantic. Don't
Mm.
believe the solar system pictures. Another thing about the secret space program. This is
Yeah.
why it all relates, because the true geography of the world. Don't believe the solar system pictures. The Earth is one of the largest planets in the solar system. It's the size of what we think Jupiter is. It's
Wow.
absolutely, in all conceivable ways, an infinite amount of area. And
So
the way it's
are you saying
designed,
every planet's size is we are being deceived, or just some planets in the solar system?
just some planets, especially Earth. That's like
Okay.
everything other than that actually is quite small compared to Earth. No, like actually, like the moon only has, I think, 4% of the density of Earth.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That it's basically the Earth is super dense, super solid, and it's designed like a Pythagorean snowflake, where you have a finite perimeter, but
Right.
an infinite amount of area inside that can be explored as long as you get incrementally down to scale. But at the same time, the scale originates at a much larger than people imagine. Like, there is a cavern in Antarctica the size of Texas, a cavern the size
Whoa.
of Texas, that if you were on the lowest point of the cavern, you could not see the roof of the cavern because has its own clouds and thus has its
Wow.
own weather. Thus, it has its own rainstorms and vegetation and fauna growing in it, and the temperature is regulated by a underwater river the size of the Mississippi, and it's as wide as the Mississippi, and the water's 75 degrees due to thermal flows.
Mm.
That's
Wow.
where Agartha is. Agartha is in one of these caverns in Antarctica.
Would you say this is similar to the now I understand that this is a technology what I'm about to explain, but there's allegedly some type of extremely advanced technology where on on an alien UFO craft, for example, the inside is actually larger than what you see on the if you were standing outside looking at it. Would this be within that realm or not? Not exactly.
Absolutely the case. That's, yeah, exactly. The infinite area idea of a finite perimeter. The was it the Tartarus from Doctor Who, right? The police box.
Right.
That concept is real. That is a real concept that you can create and engineer that. It's extremely advanced. Now, mankind can't really do that, but the idea is absolutely reality because it's in the Vedas as the scale that these extra dimensional beings literally work in is that it's to our 3D senses a finite area. To our
Got you.
3D senses, the world is a globe
Right.
with the curve and everything. To our 3D senses, our reality is very small,
Mm.
right?
Right.
And we think we are very large.
Yeah.
But to an actual understanding of reality, it's like microscopic scale. And that's the thing, like if you actually think about microscopic entities, your body is a infinite amount of area. That's what I'm
Right.
saying. Like in your senses, you think you have a finite and you understand your dimensions. There
Right.
are microscopic bacterium and life forms like mites that live on your face, that your body is an infinite amount of area to explore. And
I
if one
see
of
what
those
you're saying
mites
because it
would
just
make
keeps
a
getting
trek to
sorry, you
your
just keep going
digestive
more and
system,
more.
no, if one of these surface mites that lived like on my eyebrow would make a trek into my digestive system, it would be akin to saying you went to the hollow earth.
I understand.
Because
I
the
see.
scale
Yes.
of it is to try to tell people that underneath the surface of your world, there's an actual network of ecologies that are as essential to the fundamental makeup of where you live as your digestive tract is to your entire corpus, and your mites are as to scale as an individual person. That sounds
Right.
absurd, but that's absolutely the humbling truth.
But no, I subscribe to that absolutely because it makes perfect sense. I mean, on a
And
public
that's
level,
yeah.
it's
Well,
yeah.
I always kind of I don't cringe, but like it's always one of those things where people talk about giants, and I'm like I said, Godzilla is not a very large creature compared to the scales that I am talking about. Because, like I said, if you talk about giant aliens, and you're like, that's 9 to 12 feet tall, and I'm like, a Chihuahua and a German Shepherd have a greater size disparity and proportion disparity than a human and a Venusian. And so it would be like a dog and a slightly bigger dog. And you don't like say
Right.
you have a dog and a slightly bigger version of that dog. And
Right.
you'd be like, oh, that was a giant. And you're like, no, it's just like exactly. It's just a slightly bigger version of the same thing. A Great
Yeah.
Dane versus a Chihuahua, for example, they're both dogs.
Mm.
Chromosomally, they're the same. They're both dogs. They can interbreed, but
Right.
one is literally like 30 times bigger.
Then the
And
other
that's what I was
one.
saying. Yeah, and that's how the Orion Draco made humans in the same size disparity as we have made dogs. And you're like, yeah, a bull mastiff is like 300 pounds. A teacup poodle is like, less than a pound, but they're
Right.
the same species. It's
Well,
just like clever genetic engineering and animal husbandry to a large, exactly to a large scale, that you basically have made them seemingly two different creatures because of the
right.
size.
Right.
That's the thing. Like if you say like, well, that giant was 60 feet tall, a Great Dane is like the same ratio.
Yeah. I think that's a great I think you that's a fantastic example of how to perceive it. It's like thinking for, if there are so many different types of fish, different types of dogs, different sizes, why wouldn't there be for humans, right? Or for humanoids in general? I did want to jump into the Galactic Federation side of things. What do you see relative to what's been going on with real world events? What do you see happening, for example, the Indonesian submarine? Is there any Galactic Federation interference there, or is this just kind of the Venusian sort of overseeing us and making sure we're okay?
No, what you see with the Indonesians and what you see with our Sea Corps disaster, this is like the secret space program interferes with our daily world and our regular life, even though we are
Right.
not made aware of it. I say, for example, I don't think Indonesia is really made aware of it. Yes, their higher echelon government is, but to be
Mm,
honest, those submariners probably weren't. They exactly the lower level person doesn't have a need to know, right? It's like maybe the
right.
captain knew that's something and they were just going to go check it out. But maybe the higher command knew, but not them, like not the average sailor. What's eerie is that they were filmed singing a song saying goodbye before they sank. So I do actually believe they had a premonition of the danger, and the captain had made them record an audio, like an actual song in which they were singing goodbye to their families. I
Very
thought that was
interesting.
very strange. Yeah, very interesting. But I believe that was, like I said, this is not a new story. What you saw with the kaiju sinking ships, that happens. There are many ships that go missing. There's a lot of loss of life. There are a lot of oil rigs that have disasters. Um, they are actually involved in a lot of that seemingly random disaster type stuff. They are like a natural disaster in themselves. They also uh, because we are attacking them, you see a lot in the news stuff like seismic activity, war games, things like that. So if you want to see in the day-to-day news
Yeah.
where these things are, look up disasters and look up military operations such as war games, especially things like the militarization of the Arctic. Like you said, the Russians are militarizing the Arctic, helping to secure patrolways, maritime ways as the ice flows are sinking.
Right.
And you will start seeing ships either being lost or more and more intense war games occurring in the Arctic as they are actually either destroying it. Basically, whenever they get a chance, they will destroy these creatures. But like I said, like, so an understandable way of how to do this is they're going up there, right? Glaciers are melting, one of them thaws out, or it's migration season or mating season, and one of them is coming to shore to
Right.
lay its eggs on land.
Mhm.
And so when it comes on shore, it's just going to be a big fucking deal. So they're going to try to shoot it before it comes to shore. They're going to use long range anti-ship missiles. They're going to use long range air to ship missiles, air to surface missiles. The United States would use attack helicopters and just fire across the horizon.
So they would
Like I
not,
said,
sorry, they would not bring the Russians or the Americans, they would not bring out any of their disc shaped or try TR3Bs or anything like this, or no?
no, actually, what they would say, they would have spotted, obviously, and if they needed to, they would use them. But routinely, they'll use the conventional weapons they have. They'll
Right.
use, like, this is an odd system to kind of think, is that we'll use helicopters against extraterrestrials that we find, or other ultra-terrestrials that we find in combat, like the El Duce War. They used helicopters, they used the Osprey. That was the first use of the Osprey. These aren't bad technologies that we have. We might consider them conventional, but within the physical world and atmosphere that we use them in, they're
They
very
work.
good. Yeah,
They
they're very
work, yeah.
good. Yeah, and like I
Okay.
said, like we've shot down UFOs before. Just because you have a flying disc does not mean a Sparrow missile, Sidewinder missile won't like smash into your
Of
ass because
course. Yeah.
you have anti-laser weapons and we're fighting with like an exploding rock.
Right,
That's what I'm
right.
saying. Like, there's an odd paradox of understanding because they really, like, a gray alien um is not, like I say, is not a spiritual being. So he's a entirely physical being. And I said those are the ones that we typically are getting into scraps and skirmishes with. Sometimes Orion, like I said, we have fought off an Orion Draco invasion of Antarctica that was very strange, but we managed to do it. But there was intervention by other extraterrestrials then. But then that was when the Astro High Command was actually helping us out, and we had you have to also think this is a multi-species effort. So whenever they do show up, they can send any number of agents, any number of other species can
Right.
collaborate with us. But no, if we are defending ourselves, and this is, like I said, this is something that is an internal matter within our society because we want to keep it secret. The
Yeah, I
Ashtar
was
don't
gonna
even
actually
understand why we want to do that.
sorry,
Like
Mike.
the Ashtar don't even
I
care.
was gonna ask. I was gonna ask you. I know the Ashtar doesn't care.
Yeah.
What are the odds that one of these creatures ever ends up coming to the surface long enough for, say, for example, I don't know, a news outlet to pick up some type of footage
Well,
from a satellite or something?
interesting you should say that. They are captured on satellite photography all the time. That's how we know they exist. They're captured on satellite photography. They have been filmed by, for example, National Geographic. They filmed that one intentionally. They are known by scientists. Scientists will go and research them if they're hibernating and things like that. Like I said, it's very monarch level. Now, if an outlet, a third party source investigated it, like I said, they can really suppress information if they want. And a lot of these things occur in the middle of very low populated areas. So unless like a Lucian Islander, like a Eskimo had a cell phone and a
Yeah.
camera and actually recorded it, then it would
Yeah.
be very hard for someone not in the. I'm saying this happened actually in Russia in 2000, and it's getting more common. You're right. As time goes on, more evidence will surface, but evidence does exist.
Right.
Insiders have taken photographs. Insiders have taken video.
Yeah.
Monarch was a way to cut the make the spin there. So a lot of this footage has actually been used in Monarch for in those movies. The King Kong in 2017 has a title sequence in the beginning of the movie where they show a bunch of photography, and they showed one off Virginia Beach, where a giant kaiju was sitting there close to the shore. And it's this very odd still like photograph, and that is actually real footage, like I said, taken from above, a recon thing to show that this kaiju was off the coast of Virginia. No, they do get close, and they don't anymore. We keep them very far away now. Like we've gotten really good at it, but there is video evidence from civilians in Russia in 2018. One of them actually made landfall and was able to push its way in through the taiga, close enough to an actual city. That
you're referring to the Siberian taiga.
Yes.
Okay.
This was a nuclear incident in 2018 that happened at a place where it's basically a naval yard, and they test a lot of top secret naval weapons there. Now, ostensibly, they were testing a nuclear missile or a nuclear torpedo, and the thing detonated, and a bunch of scientists were killed, and the town suffered fallout and radiation exposure and was evacuated. Yes. And then Americans were caught trying to go in there and spy on them. They actually got arrested. No, it's on the news. You can look it up.
Yeah. That's yes. This absolutely. Yeah.
And so people were saying, well, that's proof that they're starting a nuclear weapons program again. What happened, and this was also in conjunction with a wildfire. And the wildfire, it has a lot of footage on the internet. You can look it up in LiveLeak and things. The Russian wildfire. It was the worst wildfire in Russian history in 2018. That was the year the world literally was burning. 2018 had the Australian wildfires, the California wildfires. Yeah. Now, what they'll do, the conventional powers to be, they will light forests on fire to make a smoke screen and to give an excuse to evacuate the population.
Even if it's from a decent distance away, they'll still do it in case.
Well, that's what I say. If you lived in the mountain community in the forest, and one of these things is native to the forest and walking around the mountains, they will light the forest on fire, evacuate the town, and make it an emergency zone. The smoke screen will conceal the creature as well as push it away. Now, people don't understand the true terrain of America. Over a quarter of the landmass in America, the forests, the national parks, the big barren states are completely unoccupied and unexplored. There are there are actually millions of lakes around the world, and there are hundreds of thousands of lakes in America. Many of these have never had a person set foot on them. And I know it's the same way in Canada, and I know it's the same way in Mexico, and the same way around the world.
This is I can say in Canada, absolutely.
They'll push these creatures over there with wildfires, with carefully placed wildfires. And that's why people say, like, even though there's wildfires, unless you live in a community, say like in like Colorado and the Rockies, which it will always be a small community. The reason why this Russian one was the surprise is because this town had actually grown very large. It actually had a couple of thousand people. And like I said, they are first world people. They have cell phones. They recorded what was going on. And there are photos, and they have been suppressed because it's Russia. They have their own internet. They have KGB control over all media. Few of these got out on the deep web. And the creature was like a spider, like a giant walking stick. And it was
I've seen it. I've seen that picture.
I posted it on my Instagram. So I'm saying, like, the photos are coming out. The photos are making them, the evidence is making itself known. People are getting hip to it. I think I might be the first person to really be talking about it, but I'm not the first person to be thinking about it. There is a small, because it's so absurd and crazy. This is the job they've done. They've psyopted the shit out of it, making Godzilla in the 1950s and just making tons of those fucking movies. Because like James Bond, if you actually start getting hip to it, you're like, this is fucking for real. And I know, like, say, James Bond's not for real. That's a power fantasy. It's real. That's the MI5. Ian Fleming was a real guy. That's saying, like, he was really disclosing the MI5 Secret Service and the espionage world. That's saying, like, these movies are disclosure, not in the yes, I get the fact that they're cheesy, and that's why they do it, because now it becomes crazy.
Well, it's
Like
because
they
when
like
you
they,
reference it from memory, it becomes, oh no, fuck that, no way, right? That's what people
that's
think.
and people are like, that's fuck no, exactly. Like the scientists say that can't happen, and the scientists are, and you're like, see, this is exactly what they do, and they've done this for generations. So it becomes a thing where they've gaslighted everyone not to just simply see the truth, like in the ninja. Like in the Japanese know all of the reason why they made Godzilla is because they actually did see a creature that looked like Godzilla in Antarctica in the Pacific Ocean. And it is like, I know it sounds fucking weird. They are like whales with arms and
Mm.
like humanoid faces,
Would
and they're
you
called
actually,
ninjas.
brother, sorry, have you seen the film? I think it's called Underwater with Kristen Stewart.
Yep.
Okay, about how they encountered some humanoid type or massive
Yep.
beings, and then it was an oil rig, and then the way spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen it, you see at the end how they classify all the reports, and boom, it's all shut
Yes.
down. And
Exactly. Well, yes.
would you say that's a very good description of the way things occur down there?
Yes. Okay. So everyone always talks about the secrecy around UFOs and around the space program and around the Air Force and flying technology,
Right.
Navy and industrial naval operations such as deep sea mining, oil rig operations are super top secret. And because they happen in international waters, it is extremely rare to get anyone to actually fess up to it, because the whole world of the Navy and maritime activity is secrecy and
Right.
confidentiality and discretion and internal like secrets and knowledge. Like it's the navies are the oldest continuing societies and communities in the world, harkening back to like the Philistine, like Viking era traditions and shit. Ancient, like they have their traditions are hundreds of years old. When you really see like who becomes a captain, who becomes an actual leader in the Navy, or anything like a merchant mariner fleet, in the cruise line industry, for example, who actually gets the power, who actually gets the job, is the
Right.
person who can keep fucking secrets.
Well, that's
It's
like,
the person who, yeah,
if I could say very
who,
quickly, just to my audience, for those listening and watching, it's very similar, guys, to the example I gave of that gentleman who went by the name of Victor in the late '90s, who came forward with a covered up face in an interview
yep,
with a tape of that gray alien being tortured, and he said that they pick scientists not for their skill, but for how
but
well they
secrecy.
can keep a secret, which probably explains, again, not to get off track, but the reason why so many more people, kids, are being abducted, because they just need more test subjects, so to speak, right?
No, absolutely. And the scale of the project is growing, and it will
Right.
continually grow exponentially until it is more the majority of people who have been involved than people who haven't been involved. Now, the idea of the Navy, though, is that there's a lot of honor and a lot of community built like that way. And so there's a lot of like, these things are known within the community. Sea monsters are known within the community. There's no shortage of sea monster sightings in the world. Sea monsters are seen every year. Lake monsters are seen every year. Video evidence is being returned, high definition proof. This is no longer just the idea of stories. We have sonar returns, we have echolocations returns. That's how we're starting to piece together the reality of these situations. Is because,
Mm,
like I said, more civilians are being able to go because they have greater access to it. They're not inside these systems of internal secrecy. They're
right.
not inside the community of discretion. It's like
Right.
if you are a Navy captain or commander of a submarine,
Mm,
you are an elite member of society, well within the upper echelon 1%, people.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
have a financial and equitable security that's considered a fortune by the common man. You have a lot to lose. You have
Right.
it's like you have a lot of traditions to uphold.
Right.
And when I say they can keep a secret about the kaiju, it's not only the kaiju but about the hollow earth, the internal network of things. Um, they can keep their true motives even secret from their crew, and so the
Right.
captain can just say, "No, we're just operating inside a war game," but really he knows the truth.
Yeah.
He's aware.
That's not really unrealistic, especially, even in the
Red
CIA.
October.
There you go. The CIA,
Remember the captain was like, I'm really
Yeah.
stealing this ship, but I'm going to lie to literally everybody.
Well, that's like even in Jason Bourne when they said we want to know about the Treadstone Project Treadstone, and then their superiors were like, no idea what you're talking about, and then the underling says, cut the bullshit, and then they go, fuck, okay, fine, you know.
No, exactly. No, the idea of the Men in Black, I always laugh because it's like that. Did you ever flashy thing me? No. Did you ever flash a thing, Jay? No. Tell me the truth. And he's like, no. He's just lying to him. And he has exactly these people are picked because they can lie so well.
Right.
And it's the idea that they may have gatekeepers remorse at the end of their life, but exactly that's statistically very infrequent. So this is why we're not having commanders come out, but we are having, say, for example, deep sea welders, deep sea divers in the industrial sector and zone who are coming forward with their stories more and more, because like more and more are they recruiting outwards, no longer just Navy deep sea diver officers going on the bottom of the ocean.
Now, brother, I did want to ask, because of the in the last 20, 30 years, the amount of contractors that for many different purposes that have been going down there, there's very few of them that come out as disgruntled contractors. Is that because they're just paid so well?
Exactly, they're paid so well, but more and more and more, and it's not disgruntled. They will say it out of pain of consciousness. And like I said, it's not like they're in a world where they're not followed. It's not like they're in a world where they're not either dealt with. But see, as I say, it's not a disgruntlement because the culture compared to our society is extremely wealthy. Like say oil rigs, they make hundreds of millions of dollars a day.
Holy crap.
So when BP happened, that was arguably because of one of these kaiju events, but they were able to cover it up even from the mainstream media. So it's not like an individual isn't already going up against the entire world. And when they do come out with information, it's generally over the internet. It's anonymous. And it's one of those things where it's just like, hey, I got to get this off my chest. I saw something that's giving me nightmares. This shit's real. It happened. But the clever thing that people do now, this is a real thing, and the intelligence world is create fictions so that they can tell the truth safely. And this is a tradition that even very high powered people use. For example, the actual people in charge of like the syndicates and the intelligence networks will write novels. They'll write books. There is actually a lot of precedence for this C-Lab type community, for the actual science fiction aspect of underwater colonization in reality already as these intellectual properties. And so have you ever wondered who writes or makes a video game?
Never thought about it, no.
Exactly. It's a very prestigious thing. If you're talking about just the size and scale of the production efforts to make a property, which is going to be generated and given out basically to the masses.
Right.
And that you think about the elaborate amount of story writing and dialogue and acting and the direction. It's a huge Herculean task. And it takes hundreds of people to get these studios together and to create the specialists to push the limits of technology.
Absolutely.
And then you think, well, who could coordinate that? These elites, these higher powered brokers, things like that. They're trying to tell the masses, but they do it within movies. For example, these last legendary Monarch Godzilla films, entirely written in the sake of disclosure of this type of situation. It was funded by the U.S. Navy. The U.S. Navy is prevalent in all three movies. Exactly. Like no movie gets made in Hollywood with the military without approval of the script.
Right.
The CIA controls the writing networks, the writing unions, writing guilds, screenwriter guilds. That's what I'm saying. Like these are $100 million movies a piece. These were major Hollywood releases. Who do you think decided, you know what, make the Navy help out Godzilla?
I see. Yes, it's kind of like, would you say it's the same idea of how when Francis Ford Coppola wrote the first Godfather back in the day, the mob had a lot of power, so he actually had to run the script by the mob first before.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. They want the mob help make most mob movies.
Right. Yes.
Because it paints them in an extremely positive light.
Right.
And it's because exactly that. Like the people who actually make these movies are the ones involved with it. They're trying to tell you the story, but because they can create a fiction, then people can say, well, that's not real. but
Yes.
everyone knows the roots of fiction are reality. And if you think about all the science fiction paperbacks that were written over the years, there are actual novel series based on these ocean level sea labs. There was even a television show that was like Star Trek, but it was underwater, in which they had a submarine and they had like a dolphin that could talk. And it was like,
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I forgot the name though, but yes.
honestly, they really do over the years try to explain that this is going on. It's one of those
Right.
things that it's an open secret. Like China, for example, is already proclaiming in their state-run news that they are going to build a city underwater for underwater mining, and
Right.
that people will live or be born and will die in this underwater city, making it a full colony for the Chinese government. The fake islands they're creating are going to be where they supply, they directly supply it with basically an underwater train.
Mm.
This is already disclosed programs of engineering and technology that it's like this is like building the floating airport in Japan. They can develop infrastructure. It's like no one bats an eye when they say an oil rig. The same technology that can make an oil rig support itself and survive in the open ocean, they could easily avoid all of the hostile environment stresses like the storms being on surface if they just went down 100 feet and were self-sustaining. So
Wow.
every time you see one oil rig, imagine that there are multiple oil rigs underneath it,
Right.
and they're
Yes.
developed around the same pylon system, but they're just self-sustaining. Now, the idea of, say, for example, an underwater city, you're immediately going to think Rapture from BioShock. Oh,
Yeah.
Rapture, that's silly. That's exactly how they did it, and that's around the same time they started doing it, the 1960s. They would
Mm.
literally prefabricate skyscrapers in Greenland,
Right.
sail them out to the North Atlantic, and then sink them into place.
Wow.
They were self-sustaining skyscrapers, and they built the network of linking tunnels and different agriculture sets. And it was a failure because people go crazy. There's no night darker than the bottom of the ocean. There
Right.
is no night darker. There is no darker darkness in the bottom of the ocean. Hydro psychosis or basically underwater madness, cabin fever, things like that. People, we learned our lessons, but people have gotten a lot better. And it's actually easier to support people in the ISS than it is to actually keep long-term colonization going on the bottom of the ocean. That's what keeps its numbers low. But the
Mm.
technology is sound, and we're getting better at it every day, to the
Wow.
point that the technology that they actually like, see, the movie The Abyss came out in 1993.
Right.
James Cameron is an insider when it comes to this. He was given the actual script by Navy personnel. It's about Navy salvage divers basically going down to one of these full-time underwater bases that the U.S. Navy really had that was dotted the Atlantic and Pacific.
Right.
Upon going down to the abyss, they discover intelligent life that's especially adapted to the underwater world. MarineTerrestrials, right?
Mm.
Who basically proclaim they can end the world anytime they want. The reason why they don't is because they're cohabitating with us, right, as equals, and they value life. And they even make like a tsunami kind of come and stop because they control water at a different level. Their technology is
Well,
extremely
that's
advanced.
similar. That's similar to the Lake Baikal incident where the soldiers were reported being
Exactly.
massively pushed back by just a wave of. A couple of them died, and some of them were severely injured, I think.
Yep. I don't misinterpret me by saying that everything that I'm talking about is United States. Russians have equal numbers of people, if not more, down
Gotcha.
there. Exactly. They actually have just the will to do it. They'll send more people into hazardous zones than Americans will. So there's more Russians who have actually lived on the bottom of the ocean and experienced these things as equally as us. So we're working together, but the Soviet Union has done a lot of this already. So has England, so has Germany, so has various South American powers. It's
Right.
it's like international effort to basically start exploring and populating the frontier of the bottom of the ocean.
Mm.
Why? Because the secret space program uses ocean installations to keep its personnel and to maintain its fleets. This is
Right.
where it all connects to the secret space program, because you're like, well, they're just down there harvesting oil, drilling for oil, harvesting, the minerals that you find on the bed, just as they would anywhere. What's so spooky about that? What's so secret space program about that? The secret space program, because it's run by the United States Navy and the technology allows for it, is able to use the ocean itself as the landing facilities, the landing area for the Solar Wardens program, as well as the maintenance facilities for the Solar Warden program. There are very few places in the continental United States where the Solar Warden craft ever even fly. Most of it's done in the Pacific Ocean. Most of it's done in the South Atlantic.
I was
When
actually going to
Solar
say,
Warden
brother,
ships
this
are
explains all
coming
those
back into Earth,
photographs.
yeah, if Solar Warden ship is coming back to Earth, it will land in the South Atlantic in a neutral area because it's international. It has no real stress when it comes to that. But they will keep that ship either floating like in dry dock or in facilities that are floating themselves. The Osaka airport, for example, is a great idea of the technology and engineering they use, where they build an airstrip and an accompanying airport, literally floating like an island. And then the Solar Warden ships just come down. They either can be hidden underwater because the holes can support it, and the water is, like I said, in the South Pacific around Fiji, the water is crystal blue and it's very shallow. And you literally, if you saw satellite photos of it, it looks like there are just these spaceships parked on the beach,
Right,
and
right.
islands like Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. The Chinese are making those artificial islands. Japan has a lot of those islands off Osaka, where it's just these tropical paradises, but they facilitate the maintenance and engineering and production of spaceships.
Right.
Like I said,
Yes.
the shipyard is not like in Newport News, Virginia.
Right.
It's in like Fiji, and this is odd because people don't realize there is so much international freighter traffic in the oceans that from Singapore being a nexus and a hub, they can send literally hundreds of thousands of tons of raw material to, say, Indonesia off an island in Jakarta, and then have Indonesian labor owned by a private company. And
Right.
yes, they're basically treated like slaves, and they don't know them to speak English. So what are they gonna who are they gonna tell?
Yeah.
And yes, it's like yes,
And
they're
well,
prisoners.
here's the thing too. Who the hell will believe them if they even go?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You literally were a villager they told how to turn a wrench. And you were there like on a factory line, like helping, and most of it's robotic anyway. You're just literally helping, helping out in your menial capacity. But this is how they get their bootstrap. But
It,
then
may,
your
it
Solar
makes you
Warden,
think, sorry, brother, it makes you think all the sightings that are seen above land just within North America alone, that must be nothing. And there's hundreds of thousands every month, but that must be nothing compared to what's going on above the water or below the
oh yeah,
water. Sorry.
that's what I was saying. Like, no, America is actually one of the weird places where they don't let just UFOs fly around. Even though they do, they
Yeah.
don't let Solar Warden and use its ships and the terrestrial made equipment because it would be more easily identifiable by people to say that's a government ship, that's a human made spaceship. The
Yeah.
ships that we make actually do instinctively look very identifiable. They look like flying submarines, flying aircraft carriers. The Avengers, if you've ever seen the Avengers with the flying aircraft carrier, you immediately would recognize a Solar Warden ship.
There's a
You'd be
lot
like,
of
that's a Solar
UFO
Warden.
craft, a lot of UFO footage, excuse me, that I've seen that it looks like it's been man-made.
The cigar shape
Yeah.
craft, that's ours. It's called an Andromeda Gilt drive. It basically is like a UFO mothership. It's an early version of that. It's Zeppelin combined with space age technology in many ways, where it's this giant semi-hollow structure that
Right.
reduces density
So
and weight, but allows
just
for a
to
lot of operating capacity.
Right. So just to clarify, so when people say in general, oh, if there was a secret space program, how come we don't see way more of the motherships? It's one of two things. The certain motherships, from my understanding, cannot enter any planet's orbit, and the ones that can go underwater, is what you're saying.
Yes, and this is where
Okay.
I said we can talk about UFOs now and like the different kinds of designs and engines that you're seeing. Yes, the O'Neill cylinders cannot make orbital travel. They cannot operate within our atmosphere. They can, but it takes a lot of energy, and they don't really like doing it unless they have to actually come down for maintenance.
Sorry, brother. Are these the images that we've seen that have leaked on the deep web of you can see it in sort of I forgot. I think it was images from NASA that leaked in space. So it's like a ball on one end and the rest is a
Yeah.
very thin stick.
Yes, that's called
Okay.
an O'Neill cylinder. The ball on one end is actually a palladium and I believe chromium sphere that's filled with fuel. and that they
Okay.
basically, exactly, and the internal idea is hollow, and it basically spins on itself to create artificial gravity. And
Yes.
when
Yes.
yeah, and inside they keep their storage, which is these different ships, and that's why you always see these cigar ships actually dropping out spaceships, like little
Yes.
they're always coming out of them. Those are your motherships,
Wh-
and whenever you see them, they're actually quite large. Whenever you see them, they're actually very, very high up in orbit. Now the thing with the gravity is that Earth's orbit actually now technically extends past the moon.
Right.
Earth's
Okay.
orbit is like 400,000 kilometers, right?
Holy
And
shit.
exactly. And so the higher orbit they are, the less they are actually pulled to the Earth's gravity. Like I said,
Got
gravity
you.
is more like a magnetic force. So they
Gotcha.
can't really come down too low unless they are actually going to land,
So it
right?
is it is
They,
technically possible for the mothership to land, but it's just a pain in the ass. It's not worth it for them.
it's a pain in the fucking ass. Exactly. And these larger ships, these super ships, they really push exactly the scale of things, like the Phoenix Lights. The
Right.
Phoenix Lights was an emergency landing from one of these ships that's actually designed like a flying V, and they have
Yes.
different
Yeah.
designs. But the
The
idea of it being
yeah.
a multi-kilometer long arrangement of lights in ship, it's a huge structure. When it was coming down,
The Arizona lights, right?
yes, the Arizona Phoenix
Yeah.
Lights of 1997. When it was coming down, they had to make an emergency landing. Right, the only airport around the time was going to be Albuquerque, New Mexico, and then
Right.
Douglas, the Wright Patterson Air Force Base.
Right.
Right, so it had it, and when these original planes were made in the 60s, Phoenix, Arizona was not that large.
Gotcha.
So its
Right.
emergency plan was to land in this one runway in the middle of the desert, while
Right.
a million people strong city had developed while it was in orbit. And so when it
Ah,
came back down, they just had to bite the bullet, and it doesn't really maneuver very well. It doesn't turn on a dime, but like I said,
right.
it has enough power not to like immediately fall like a stone. It's an anti-gravitation craft after all. But exactly,
But
the
it's a
closer you
totally
are,
different propulsion system, correct?
yes, this exactly. It's all electrogravitics. It's all flux drive, torsion fields. It's all like controlling gravity wells and basically like the convocation engines where you're creating a lack of gravity around you, so you're basically being pulled up and out all the time. Like I say, so it's not
Have you
you're
ever been on one of them from what you can recall or no?
yes, yes. Solar Warden actually had a lot of was an experience of a lot of carriers and larger carrier craft. When we were operating in the Hollow Earth, we used the smaller operational craft because, like I said, these larger operational crafts have a lot of difficulty flying within Earth's atmosphere or within Earth's magnetic pull. And by that, I mean the scale of a large O'Neill cylinder, a large aircraft carrier, and Solar Warden outside the planet is measured in kilometers, right? And that's how the ships are designated, is how many kilometers, like long they are, or how much, volume they really have. Because
Right.
like, the actual weight, the super heavies, things like that can range into the, millions of tons. So it's hard to operate the anti-gravity power, the fields or engines on Earth because, they weigh so much. They just are so fucking big. The smaller aircraft carriers are comparable to real aircraft carriers, if not real amphibious landing craft that
Got you.
are landing ships that are the smaller aircraft carriers, helicopter carriers that people would know about if they saw them on the Earth. Like if they saw them and they knew the knowledge of warships, their scale is between a full-sized aircraft carrier, uh, like the Carl Vinson or the JFK, and then a helicopter carrier, marine lander like the Baton or the I'm spacing on another name for one of those marine aircraft carriers. They're used by the Marine Corps and they're tiny aircraft carriers. They're stubby. They're stubby.
I know what you're talking about.
It's
Shit.
they're helicopter carriers. They only really carry
Oh,
helicopters.
helicarriers?
Yeah, they carry Ospreys. They carry short. It's interdiction. Where you say aircraft carrier might have an operational range of like 14,000 kilometers.
Right.
A shorter one may only have the proximity of like 100, maybe 400 kilometers. That's
Got
like
you.
an aircraft carrier has a crew of like 5,000. A marine helicopter carrier may have a crew of 1,000.
I understand. Okay, I see.
It's
Yeah.
significantly smaller, but at the same time, it looks exactly like the same and it operates exactly the same. Now, when we're in Hollow Earth operating in these cavities, and these caverns, a lot of these ships were drone carriers, but they also carried, you know, the array of different aircraft that you would also pilot and keep. I was not a pilot of the smaller craft. I was just an aviation electrician that
Right.
worked on these larger ships, and I also have experience on the uh, habitat ships, the base, the actual space stations, the floating bases that we have, as well as Ashtar High Command and Orion Draco Dark Fleet, mostly Dark Fleet. I have very little experience with the Orion Draco. They're actual ships. I have seen them. I knew the intel on them, but I actually have only been aboard one in simulation, and that was the recovered one. And it was just basically to see what it was like, you know, as a field trip almost. Not that they like that
Yeah.
was it wasn't it was actually a virtual reality simulation of what they were like on the inside, just so that we could understand what we were dealing with. I am still
Right.
actually completely amazed by Orion Draco ship design and technology, even though I know a lot about them. I know their different classes. I know their strategies. I also know their unique shape and configuration and style and culture that goes around their ship construction and piloting it, the crewing of it, as well as their species. But I have been on Astra High Command crystal ships, their colony ships. I have been on their smaller interdictory ships, their interceptors, their fighters as a passenger, as well as a crewmate on the Solar Warden carrier ships, and as well as their space stations, and you know,
What
logistic
does it
ship
what
transport.
does it look like inside these craft? Is it human looking because humans have partly designed some of them, or like when you walk onto these craft, what do you see? Is it sort of like a very gray sort of benign color like Bob Lazar would describe or is it there's more design to it? And like does it look like a metal in like the interior? Is it do you feel like holy shit walking in like this is something different, or it's kind of like nah, not too big of a deal?
Well, Bob Lazar saw a gray ship that he called the sports model. That was a gray ship, and the grays are different because they have a different aesthetic. They don't really have any personality or things like that. No, a Solar Warden
Yeah.
ship looks completely different than a gray ship, even though it uses like, you know, advanced technology and materials. It looks extreme. Like you would instinctively know it's human design because it's made for humans. Like the idea of our comfort and our survival and our under like, you know, ability to navigate it. So internally, like hallways, gangways, uh, everything like you would be conventional galleys. You know, they all look the same.
Yeah.
Heads, toilets, all look the same. But you
So
know,
if it,
obviously, extremely advanced levels of quality, like very high quality, very polished. It wasn't dingy. It wasn't dusty. It wasn't damp. It wasn't like, you know, a creaking rust bucket. It was like made of plastics, very sterile. The best representation of it, I think a lot of sci-fi movies really hit the nail on the head. It's very much your stereotypical internal government or quote unquote good guy spaceship sized. It's not like Star Wars where things are just kind of falling off and everything is dusty. But like
Star Trek, the very clean
yeah,
interior.
very much like, yeah, everyone cleans it every day.
Yeah.
Everyone's very much like comfortable and they're invited. The chairs are very nice and ergonomic. You know, like there's no one that is not like things are sparked. Like, you know, you have to like be in an uncomfortable, like there's air conditioning,
So let me
proper
let me ask
gravity,
you
air,
let me
food.
ask you, Mike, if I went to sleep tonight and you took me and dropped me onto the inside of one of these ships and then I woke up in that ship and you weren't there, you just left me there, would I wake up and go, like where am I, or would I be like, okay, this is something else?
You would immediately know it was different, but it would be a trip because you would be now inside a ship, and yeah, everything is kind of compartmentalized. So you'd have to find, say, for example, no, there's signs telling you where to go.
Right.
You might be kind of alarmed because, like, say, for example, there's lines on the floor. There's
Right.
painted lines on the floor, and that's so different levels of personnel know where they're going, and there's different
Yeah.
things like unspoken, like symbols and signs that are unique to the Solar Warden, which because it's new, it's a space vessel. It's a multi-environmental vessel, but it is a vessel. So, for example, different cautionary flags, different striping patterns, different color patterns, they all mean
Right.
significant things. Unless you were indoctrinated and trained just for the sheer minutia of it, you might be a little lost and disoriented. but it's not or up is down, down is up, chaos reigns. No, like
Right.
the joke though is absolutely true in Demolition Man, where when he goes to use the bathroom, there's 3 seashells and he doesn't know how to use them.
Yeah, yeah.
There are things like that, like the everyday person, the layman, may actually have trouble adjusting to the fact of like automated bathrooms. Like just like if you've never used like one of those automated toilets when you get
But
up
this
and it
is
flushes and you're like, oh, like you kind of spook out like,
yeah,
oh, I didn't know.
yeah, yeah.
Like, when you walk in, lights turn on.
Right.
Everything's like powered by Siri. So if you woke up and you were like, what's going on, and a voice was like, oh, hello, you were delivered here, like what's today is this, and
Right.
right now the time is this, and you're like, what's going on, where am I, you
Would
were
it- would
on
it, would an
board,
example, a good example of an interior also be, for example, what you see on either the interior of the ship on Prometheus or the interior of the ship on Passengers?
I would say Passengers is more accurate. It's very brightly lit. It's not dark or gothic at all. So it's not Event Horizon. It's not. I mean, yes, derelict ships can be very frightening
Mm,
because like a derelict, like a ghost ship. But yeah, anything can be scary if the power's off and everyone's dead inside. But no, like it's if it's operating very well, it's like more like a cruise ship. It's more
right.
like meant for to keep people sane and productive and happy, and a happy person's more productive. So it's more kind of optimistic looking than it is more of like a steampunk cyber gothic like nihilistic,
Yeah.
like no one even gives a shit, they're just in space and everyone's dirty and like
Yeah.
unshaven and like bitching. The ICC is more like that, where their
Okay.
shit is more neglected and their crews are extremely disgruntled because of different existential neglects and things like that. And
ICC standing for
the
Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate.
corporation conglomerate.
Okay.
And exactly, like a lot of it is because of their own um, uncaring authorities, their own
Mm,
uncaring fleet support. But that's not Solar Warden. Solar Warden is a military conjuncture effort, independent effort, but it's in alliance with Ashtar. So it's a lot of, it's trying its best. And
right.
that's how you really get a feel for it inside these things. Stanley Kubrick's uh, 2001 A Space Odyssey is very, very good. Where that was like the early days, like that was like the 50s, 60s era models, and those ships still exist. Those
Right.
ships are still I was stationed on a ship that was built in 1974.
Wow.
It was older than my mother.
Wow.
That's what I'm saying.
Holy.
So like you really think about it, like that's what I'm saying. Like you're on a ship, and so the style is always a little weird, but it's also always a little bit advanced. So yes, you're on a ship that kind of has like a Jetson futuristic vibe to it,
Mm,
like a Star Trek vibe to it, where it's
right.
like very much like swinging 60s future, but there it is also extremely updated and far more advanced than say for example a conventional ship. It's not just you're in like a rust bucket. You're
And
actually in
there are other aliens, other species on there too, I would imagine.
Solar Warden is mostly human. So most
Okay.
ships only have a human crew. Now there are ships with mixed species crew, and they are there as advisors. But Solar Warden is almost entirely run by humans for humans, you know, and
Right.
so it's kind of like a foreign nation's navy may have foreign personnel in their bases taking classes, being taught, cross taught. When I was in a foreign exchange program with the Asher High Command, the Asher High Command have more extraterrestrials on their ships proportionally, just
Mm,
living, just
right.
cohabitating, living and existing, than we have actually even working on our ships. It's not like Star Trek, or it is very much like Star Trek in that case, where it's like, yes, you might get your Worf, you might get a one alien kind of on there, and your
Yeah.
space stations have more of them. So your Voyager, your Deep Space Nine, that'll be where you meet your extraterrestrials. Your space station is kind of where you have your best chance of seeing one. They
Right.
generally don't hang out in your general population. We're not at the level yet where you're at a bar and you're like shooting the shit with some
Yeah.
alien from another moon, and you're like, oh, what's it like being one of you? And you're like the Star Wars thing where you go in the cantina and everyone's just like hanging out and
No,
partying.
it
No,
would I would envision it to be sort of like for example, in Star Wars when you have the extremely authoritative, superior, very calm, respectful, but you know they're in charge, like the master Jedi aliens. They come, they give their advice, and they go back to their chambers or their quarters of the ship. and they just do
A
their own
lot of it
thing?
is a lot of it is different. Like sometimes the Ashtar will send their young pilots, their young cadets over to our ships so that they can kind of see and they can grow as well when their
Right.
aged authorities do come. It's one of those things where it's more of like a formal thing, like they're talking about business, they're going to do something important, right?
Right.
Same thing with the Orion Draco. Orion Draco only send their diplomats unless you work for the embassy, the Atlantis Rising government, or some kind of like in between. You
Right.
have really no business ever communicating with. That's what I'm saying. Like you really have no business to, and that thus remember it's all need to know. You don't have freedom of motion. You don't have freedom of movement. And
Mm.
it's like sometimes if you're lucky, you might see one at a distance. You might be in the same company of them, or you
Right.
might be assigned to a duty where that's just your luck. Like if you a lot of yeomen, a lot of paperwork guys, a lot of intelligence officers. Like I said, I was in kind of intelligence for a little while, involved with the aircraft and maintenance. So I was able to talk to a lot of engineers,
Right.
talk to a lot of technicians and other races.
Mm.
That was extremely fortunate in my aspect, but that was really the only chance I had to contact other extraterrestrials was in an engineering capacity. We're talking specs, talking the trade, and everything that I communicated with them was relatively involved with that. It wasn't like asking them if they had like a sweetheart back home. I mean, if we did have
Yeah.
casual conversations and we really did kind of form friendships in certain cases. Now, weirdly enough, those cases were not with the major species. The major species
Right.
exactly are more business. They're more like
Let's get our shit done and then we're out of here.
exactly when the Ashtar was taught when I was cross-examining with the Ashtar, you also got to think the age is extremely young for me because I started at 9 and the oldest I ever was in any one of these timelines was 29.
Okay.
I'm 34 right now, so I was younger even at the oldest point than I was back then. Exactly. So at some point, a lot of this was in my teenage years. And if you're 15 and have been working in the secret space program in an alternate timeline for the last 6 years, uh, and you have already been indoctrinated enough, you don't have those origins yourself. I didn't have any attachment to life outside of the program.
Right.
So my
Right.
mind, I think, like you said, like the aliens are no, we're gonna get our shit done and get no. You're like that. Like human beings are like that. Human beings are very much like the militaristic kind of fascist assholes in this situation. No, you're right. Like the Star Wars thing, we're like,
Yeah.
like status report. Like, like it's very much like
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
we are a naval military force in the Solar War. So that is an actual thing. Like you are walking around in a uniform. You're hoping to become a pilot or be in the action. You're hoping to do your duty, whatever that is. Exactly. You're very much like Starship Troopers in that mindset, where even when you are talking to an alien, you're like, like I know the
Yeah.
score. Like you're not gonna get to me. Like you're
Yeah.
like, don't
Yeah.
trick me with your bullshit. Like we're no, and then we were military aviation electricians, but we had to understand and know the different technologies that were being used on these airframes and apply them to ours as well as their methodology, their tribal knowledge, their species knowledge when it came to being a technician. Because
Right.
exactly, ultimately they're going to integrate these forces, but human beings are deemed to kind of work solo. We do our best work when we're very much. It's based on our own paranoia. We
Right.
really don't function very well if we have to kind of run things by a species that's not human. So they want to keep us as different human pockets. Yetis, for example, Sasquatch, they're
Yes.
involved with Earth Alliance too. We encounter them. They are on our side. They have their own ships. They have their own fleets because they're just a little bit too different than us culturally. That we just don't really work well together. And there's a lot of stubbornness and butting heads and failure to communicate and things
Mm.
like that. Culturally, it's just too shocking.
Right.
Now, this is weird because ships are separated by nationality sometimes. And even though we all have universal translators, they will keep, for example, the Indians on their own ship. They will
Huh.
keep the Chinese on their own ship. They will
Interesting.
keep African crews on their own ships. And it's
Wow.
still just because exactly that the culture of the Navy is to keep everyone as uniform as possible. So that my
Yes.
ship and my crew were all mainly Americans, all mainly people who all look the same. Exactly. So it's one of these where if I want to say generalities, like everyone in the Solar Warden was brunette and had hazel eyes and had olive skin and was athletic and very very extrovert and like intense. That's just because the ship I was on was an experiment where that crew was all selected for our similarities.
Oh. Wow.
It's kind of one of those things because you put them all together, and human beings
Right.
all are tribalistic and xenophobic because of the Orion Draco engineering. That if we all look the same and act the same, we're like, hey, looking good, buddy. Hey, same
Yeah.
back at you. Like that's the thing. Like it's not intentional, but that's just how human beings
Do you
are.
think we'll ever break free from that or no?
In generations, it's just got to be, bred out of us. Like I said, everything changes, and it's just one of those things where because people can't change within their own lifetimes usually, and if people could change within their lifetimes, it would make it extremely fast. The end goal
Right.
is to change that. The end goal is to have the new world order, the trans species world,
Right.
where everyone can basically just get it, like your neighbor's a Ryan Draco refugee,
Right.
like your boss is a gray. Like
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
want that to kind of happen, but at the same time, it's going to take a lot of work. And they say, well, they want it done within a few centuries. So it's going to be like a multi-level thing where they got to affect us culturally, entertainment wise, get us up to date with the truth of our world, and then also get us philosophically caught up, like say issues of religion. We're not even talking about spirituality. We're not even talking about culture that way. There was a movie called Enemy Mine where it's a crashed pilot with an Orion Draco. It's clearly an Orion Draco pilot, and they're enemies, but they have to live together as basically castaways on this asteroid. And
Mm.
and it's like the guy's like, uh, he says something, and the guy's like, "Who said that?" And he goes like, "Mickey Mouse," and the guy's like, "Mickey Mouse," like the
Yeah.
idea, like
Yeah.
you don't even understand like how what you think is normal is to them like they don't know anything about your upbringing or your culture, your orientation, or your individual, your identity.
Right.
So just to get that kind of all on the same page, that's what the Astro High Command are trying to do, and that's why you have things like the Orion Drake, the Notwaffen, who doesn't participate with the Solar War and is not really involved with the Earth that way, but is actually operating as an independent rogue human empire in space off planet. Like they're allowed to do that because that's
Mm.
still a part of humanity, and that's still part of the bigger picture. Like the humans, they
You
can't
can't push
force the
aside
human.
one set of, you're trying to say you can't push aside one set of humans and say to the rest of them, hey, welcome.
Yeah, they have to kind of bring everyone together. And so the dilemma is with the Notwaffen not really wanting to be together. They want to be independent, and they're seizing the power, the technology that allows them. And
Right.
their deal was, yeah, we won't like invade and take over Earth, so don't worry about that, right? We will never hurt another human being, but we're going like wage war against other species, and they're very, very xenophobic. They're very military. They're very fascist and aggressive, and they use
Mm.
what you would consider forbidden technologies, taboo technologies to commit taboo ends. And they said they're total opposite of Solar Warden ethically and ideologically. Now, unless they actually attacked us, the
Yeah.
Ashtar High Command has um, no authority to attack them or to be violent towards them. So they have to kind of continue to negotiate and constantly
Yes.
urge and battle them on like a philosophical level, like where it's a political ideological level. Now, in that weird way, there's a peace on Earth when it comes to um like there's not like if anyone outwardly attacked us, we would then attack them back, but it's more of an ideological battleground.
Yeah, I
It's
see
more
what
like
you're
who's going
saying.
to have influence here. And so Orion Draco are actually attacking the Earth with frequencies, and they say if they can convert, they can keep us down. They can slow the progress of the Astra High Command, making their job exponentially more difficult. If
Got
they can
you.
keep confusing us and making us paranoid. And in many ways, every human being is victim or suffering these attacks because they're sending these beacons out across the
Yes.
universe.
Right.
Now, the whole thing is that we are trying to actually get further and further capabilities of going further and further out.
Right.
And okay, so when you really consider this, it's a defensive thing where they're trying to defend the earth and trying to kind of like defend our frontier and our stake in it. They're also trying to
Right.
defend the real populations of the earth. Now
Right.
this is paradoxical because, like I said, they wanted to create disclosure, and the things they are doing are protecting the everyday person from knowing what's going on.
Right. Yes. I see what you're
But
saying.
paradoxical where it's like, yes, everything the Solar Warden is doing is to try to keep itself secret.
Mm.
And yes, everything that the Ashtar High Commander are doing is try to get us at the level where we'll understand it. Like I say, it's very paradoxical, where it's
Gotcha.
like the military is seeking to create a society of intelligent enough people so that they can disclose the information that they've been keeping top secret and classified from these very same people for generations.
Got you, brother. I'm really sorry to cut you off, but we're hitting the 2 hour mark, and I got an appointment I got to run to. Can you
No
please?
problem, exactly.
I'd like to thank you so much again for coming on, but could you please tell everyone where they could find you, how they could reach you, and all that? And I just want to say before you say anything to the audience, Rumors of Instinct, you can message this guy, man, and he'll very gladly answer you. For him, it's all about the knowledge, which is why I really respect that. So please tell everybody where they could find you.
No problem. Absolutely. The Rumors of Instinct podcast is my project right now. Like I said, I create a lot of digital media, so I'm creating art. I'm creating like different methods of communicating this message. And I'm always open to collaborations. And I have my own podcast, which, like I said, that I offer interviews, special guest things. But I also cover topics in the Secret Space Program solo a lot. And every effort I do is to kind of explain this truth. So while the efforts are different in various, like I said, I'm making art, Instagram. I upload daily these images, little proofs, little pieces of evidence, things, I kind of like believe it's all towards the goal of disclosure. It's all towards the goal of this truth, this secret space program truth, in trying to perfect the message, trying to grow the community, trying to kind of bring it forward. And I have actually a lot of exclusive insider sources. I also have my own personal experiences, and I'm able to kind of like investigate journalists a lot in a very effective way. So if you want to check out what I have to offer, the Rumors of Instinct podcast has 90 plus episodes. This will be 91. I have 300 plus videos on YouTube. Check out the archives by checking out the playlists and the different levels of playlists. The Secret Space Program videos all are there, as well as if you want, to contact me, DM me. My email is all there. The link tree is all on the Instagram, so you can find my different social media accounts, different projects. Like I said, the information is always going to be forthcoming. I'm going to be constantly working on it from here on out. I will be, for example, writing books and offering packages of that information, documentaries, full length, like a documentary is 2 hour long plus conversations, all the subjects. And so I'm always going to be trying to working to bring the information out in easier and more understandable formats, more entertaining formats, more accessible formats for the everyday person. I know this is a lot of information. I know it's like a huge download, and it blows people's minds that any of this is possible. But I will always try my best to try to explain it the way I think is easiest for you to understand. And you can find that exclusively on the Rumors of Instinct podcast. You can find that information like Gen Z is creating on his channel, which I absolutely appreciate and absolutely always watch myself. He's saying some good shit. Exactly. And this is why I'm kind of choosing to always kind of give you priority and talking about this information first.
And I appreciate that so much, man.
Absolutely. It's a mutual appreciation, it's a mutual respect. And like I said, this information that I'm bringing to Gen Z, you can find on my channel, you can find through my efforts. But like I said, always, I appreciate the synergies and I appreciate the crossover of audience and everything. So I absolutely appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, brother. We'll talk soon. Cheers.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
Cheers, man.